To what it was like. Here we go, and we've got a barbel. Now what? Well, good morning and welcome to the beautiful River Trent at Burton Joyce, notoriously known, this particular stretch, as the Golden Mile. Now we're actually in the Nelson field of the Burton Joyce stretch of the River Trent, and where I'm actually sat today is a known hotspot for barbel, and that is our aim today. I can't tell you how much I love catching barbel. They are just such a beautiful fish, and they're very clever as well. A lot cleverer than what people think they are. So what our aim today is to actually try and catch a barbel on the pole using the Aero X7. Now, I've already done it once before, but we want to get a nice video today of the whole process of how we're actually targeting these clever fish. And I really do think they are clever, especially during the summertime. The daylight, the river's low, the water's clear. And this is where actually using the pole, you can really trick those nighttime feeders, the evening feeders, barbel, or when there's colour in the water. That's when you catch them. When the river is low and clear, they're very, very difficult to catch whilst the sun is out. When the light drops, they're easier to catch, and this is why your specimen anglers actually target the barbel more in the evening and at night for that reason. But with a pole, you can get that accuracy right, you can get your presentation better, you can fine down, you can do a refined approach, let's say, of actually targeting these big fish. Look, you know, I could hook a double figure fish today, and I've already done it, and it's an experience of a lifetime catching a barbel on the pole. I can't think of anything more exciting than the bite, the fight, the power of the fish in this fast flowing water using a pole. So let's get to my peg, and I'll run through everything from the bait that I'm using, how I'm feeding my peg, but more importantly the rig and how I'm actually going to present that bait in this fast flowing water. So let's get going. Just filling the bait dropper full of mainly hempen castor with a little bit of chopworm and a pinch full of maggots, because we're going to be alternating between mainly, hopefully, if we want to select the barbel, those three baits: castors, worms and maggots. But like what I said in the intro, these fish are very, very, especially during the daylight when the water was clear, very picky. So I like to limit my options to 3 options for this style. If the bait dropper works. No problem. I need to make sure I feed it in the right spot. I'm feeding my bait downstream, which enables me to hold that rig straight, and this is why you need a really powerful pole. As you can see, although the X7 is a great all-round pole, it's got some authority and some strength behind it, which is so important. I'm fishing an overshotted 12-gram lollipop, and because the river is low, I can get away with that weight. Usually I've been wanting to use maybe an 18 or a 20, but I'm feeding my bait down my peg, like I said, so I can present my float correctly. It's really important that you can present it correctly and make sure that the bait dropper goes exactly where you want it to go. And this is the beauty about it, you cannot get anything more accurate than this. The bait dropper is not, behaving. But I try and keep a tight line and then drop it that last foot, which opens that trap door. So I'm feeding about 6 bait dropper pulls of bait. Now, what you got to remember is you've got everything in the swim wanting to feed. So this is why a volume of bait for barbel is quite important. What you feed at the start in this scenario is quite important, because like I said, the fish are there. And I want them to settle over a bed of bait, so I don't have to then introduce that much afterwards. I might have to introduce the odd bait dropper as the day progresses, but the main job is setting a trap. So I'm using a marker on the other bank, which is the pylon. So I know exactly where the main feed is. Now that's not necessarily to say that that's where I'm going to catch my fish, and this is why I'm fishing quite a long length of line between the float and the pole tip, because it allows me to exercise a large trail, is the word. The trail of the bait. It allows me to work down the swim if I need to, because not always are the fish over the bait, they hang back from the bait, which blends with the principle of when you do target barbel on a feeder. Gone are the days where they come up to the feeder, nose in the feeder. Half the time you have to fish quite a long hook length, and they're actually at the back of the feed. You've got your uneducated fish coming up to the feeder, and your more educated fish hanging back. One more of this and I'll have done the job. Now the beauty about it, like I said, because the fish are here, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if I get a bite quite quickly off a barbel. And my go-to upbait, without a shadow of a doubt, is casters for barbel. Hemp to bring them in, casters to catch them. And one more feed. Now if you notice on my pole, I've got a tie wrap, and the tie wrap is to swing the bait dropper out to the right depth and the right area, because you can imagine if I haven't got a tie wrap on, then the bait dropper could quite easily drop in the water under my feet, open up, and not enable me to actually get my bait out. Let's give him one more. So I've actually fed, I reckon, 2 pints of bait with this first feed. Quite a lot of bait. It's amazing how much bait you can actually get in one of these bait droppers. Of course, you get them all different sizes, but we're targeting big fish here. So I want to be positive with my approach, no messing around. Make sure the bait droppers are at the right distance, just there, and let it drop. There we go. I'm gonna have arms like Iron Man by the time I finish today. But hopefully, if we get rewarded with some big fish, it'll be all worth it. And this is the beauty about this style of fishing. You really don't know what to expect. One thing I must stress, I'm going to talk about the rig in a minute, is always make sure everything's intact. Hook's tied properly, nice and tight. Because let me tell you, when you hook one of these fish, they go absolutely crazy. Now, a lot of people might start with worm, because I have fed a little bit of chopped worm, and that might produce the odd perch straight away, the odd chub, but I'd always go for caster because it's more selective for barbel. So I'm putting 3 casters on a size 12 super spade. I'm fishing fluorocarbon 022 up length with an 024 main line, something really robust. And like I said, when we hook one of these fish, you'll see why you need this specific, specialised setup. So we're all ready now. My float is bang over where my feed has emptied out, but that doesn't mean to say where my feed has settled, and this is why a long line is really important. So now I'm just gradually working the rig down until I get the rig working right. Just about there, I reckon that's, oh, I've just had a sign straight away. That's just about right, that. Now, the interesting thing when you're barbel fishing on the pole is the bites are ridiculously quick. You don't miss them. It's as simple as that. That's not sitting right, that. Let me put it a little bit further out. So I'm swinging it out. So now my hook bait is arcing back over my bait. And hopefully that float will sit just a little bit neater. That's it, that's better. So you can see the body of the float coming out, but that's because of the design of the float. I've overshotted the float quite a bit. So if I let the float go, no, it's not quite right, that. It's not quite right, I need another shot. And this is the thing when you're river fishing, everything changes at a split second. 1 minute the rig's working right, and you have to make adjustments all the time until all of a sudden you get that right balance. So I'm putting a number 4, of course non-toxic, Stott below the Olivet, just to bring that float down a bit. I haven't got it working. There's no rush. I've set the trap. There's a very good chance, like I said, that we may get a bite very quickly because the fish are already there, or notoriously live here. That's the best way of saying it. Could be straight away, we might have to wait quite a while for a bite. It all dictates how they want to feed today. Yeah, that's better. That's better. And this is the beauty about a bump bar. A bump bar is really, really important. Now, I'm now holding my float maybe 2.5, 3 foot down from where I empty my bait out. That's better, yeah. So just that number 3 has made a difference. Now, it might look as if the float is at such an angle that the bait is off the bottom, but I'm laying maybe 1.5 foot of line on the bottom. You know, this is about trying to create a reasonably static presentation, and this is why a bump bar is so important. And although I'm laying such an amount of line on the bottom, when you get a bite with this setup, trust me, you'll know about it. The float goes under, the line tightens up, and the elastic comes out even before you've had time to strike half the time. And this is why I love it. It's just so exciting. Now, fishing a lollipop, there's 2 ways of doing it. You can fish it static like what I'm doing, being positive, setting a trap. But also you could fish a lighter lollipop and actually work your bait. But for what we're fishing for today, I want to find where the fish are sat in my peg. And in order for that to happen, I've got to work very gradually my hook bait down. So although I'm fishing a static bait in a specific area, the majority of the time, I'll be occasionally putting my rig further down my peg if I feel that I need to try that untouched zone of my swim where they may be set off. And this often happens when the water's clear. And like what I said, they're not always on top of that volume of bait. They could be further down. They could even be 1 metre further down than where my float actually is sat now. And this is why a long length of line is really important. It allows you to work your swim. And of course, because the water's clear, I don't want any pole over the actual heads of fish. It's, I reckon, 7.5 foot deep here. I want my pole away from where my hook bait is. Think that way when you're river fishing, and you'll catch more fish and you'll catch the bigger fish as well. Well, we've swapped to a worm now. Like I said, we've had 10-15 minutes on 3 casters. No bites. Well, sorry, an indication we had. So it is really important to make the most of that window by fishing the right bait on your hook, and swapping and changes make a big difference with barbel. You know, if you just sit there with 3 casters, you could quite easily have barbel right next to your hook bait, but they won't take it for whatever reason. Some days casters are good, other days other baits are better. So you have to ring the changes, and especially that little window when you know there's barbel in your peg, change your hook bait, make a reaction. It's amazing how many times it happens. You can see I'm just working that float down a little bit until I've got it working bang right. Now you can't work your hook bait down too quickly because of the amount of line I'm laying on the bottom. So you can imagine the line is going through the water at an angle. I'm of course laying line on the bottom, so I have to gradually work it down, so I've always got a tight line, because otherwise if I work it down too quick I'll create an arc in the line, and often the hook bait could have a good chance of snagging up, whereas now you can imagine it's tight to the hook now but still laying on the bottom in a completely straight line downstream, because although I have got an amount of line laying on the bottom, everything's in touch with the float bristle, as far as we know, as far as it looks. I'm just still not happy with how it's sitting, so I'm just going to work that float just a little bit further down. That's better there. So every run down with a float, regardless of the body, the style of the float, is different. When you're flat float fishing, it's so important, if need be, like what I've had to do today, just to slightly overshot it. So you might be using a specific weight, but you might have to add that extra lead on to straighten that float up and get it working. Now look at the difference in positioning now, how that float's sitting in comparison to what it was like. There we go. And we've got a barbel. Well, what? That is brilliant. What a bite that was. Now this is a big fish. This is a big fish, and this is why you need proper gear. Now my aim now is, it's took me well downstream. I mean, that bite was ridiculous. I need to get this fish upstream and get some laggy back in that pole. So I'm bringing the pole back just a few meters, which enables me to hold against the pole in this very, very strong wind. But I've got to get this fish upstream. If it takes me any further downstream, especially with a pole, I'll lose it. So I'm gradually working this fish upstream now. What a bite that was. That was incredible. You just don't miss barbel bites. And this is exactly why we've come here today, to experience this. I mean, not forgetting this is proper car plastic. They are so vicious. So vicious. And I've got to leave the whole pole up. Until I get that fish upstream, I cannot break any sections down. As soon as you break sections down, that fish is in control of you. And the last time I was here, I actually was landing them with a full 13 meters of pole, although the rig was only 6 meters deep. And that's because of the amount of stretch there is in the elastic. Now you can actually see what I mean. And this is what I'm on about, how strong this pole is. Now this is a big fish. This is a big fish. So I'm getting the rig upstream now. And I'm having to face away from the camera because it's so important I get this fish upstream. I mean, this is exactly what we've come here for. That was absolutely amazing. And you just have to keep working it. This is a big fish. I had one last time we come about 7 or 8 pound. This feels, yeah, this is a big fish. This is a fish with real power. It wouldn't surprise me if this is a double figure barbel. And so it's amazing when you do get them upstream how less pressure there is on your tackle. Now, I know it might shock a lot of you, but I'm actually playing this barbel on a match kit. And the reason for that is, it's going to come up in a minute. The reason for that is, it allows me to be more responsive on the bite and more responsive with my presentation, that if I was using a power kit, just because of this crosswind, that extra weight at the end of the pole could cause problems with playing the fish. What I've always advocated with this pole is how strong it actually is. And you can imagine, once the pole is in full length, the whole of the pole is working together. And these top kits are only rated to a 12, but let me tell you, they are incredibly strong. But the elastic is at its maximum now, but this is a big fish. And until I actually see where that fish is, I mean, the thumping from that fish is incredible. This is so enjoyable. I went shark fishing last week, and I think actually this matches with it. The excitement of the float going under, the fight, everything. It's just wow. It's just incredible. We've even got a little tune going on with the fish. Right, I can take a section off now. Oh dear, I can't lose my landing net. Oh dear. Oh dear, a little bit of a problem. It's not what you want, is it? On camera. Can't edit this one, Barry, can we? Right there. I don't want that fish to go downstream, but this is a big fish. That's better. Back up and running. This is a big fish. So once this fish is nearly ready for netting, it will coax its way towards me downstream. That's a big fish. That's a big fish. But what a bite. So gradually now you can see I'm actually working the fish towards me by angling the pole more behind me. And this is where yeah, that's a big fish. That's a double. I just could do with, here we go. And he's in! We got him! Now look at that. Now, this is exactly what fishing for barbel is all about. Look at that right in the corner of the lip. And it just shows how strong that fluorocarbon is, because I believe any other material, that fish would have broke me, especially on that initial run. Are you going to behave, my little beauty? Look at that. Beautiful. Now that's a barbel. Well, we're into our second fish. It's taken a while, and let me tell you, the presentation is really, really hard work. But we're into our second barbel of the day, and it took a while for us to get the second fish. And like I said earlier, I'm having to fish a bit more selective to stand the chance of hooking a barbel. The bizarre thing about it is I'm not getting bites off anything else. I've had literally 2 bites. And this has taken me well downstream. The only problem is the wind's really picked up and it's making presentation so difficult. So difficult. You've got to keep that pole as still as possible to maintain good bait presentation. And it's been like going to the gym for 5 hours, to be honest with you. But it's all worth it when finally the float goes under and you're into your first or second. But this is a powerful fish. No chance at the moment of getting it upstream. Just got to maintain that pressure and hopefully it'll work its way up. It's a good fish. Let's start bringing that pole back. That pole. And now to make it worse, I've even got a wind coming down at me. And I sound as if it's hard work, and let me tell you, it is hard work. The line is off. Well, what an interesting day that has been. That has been fantastic, but a shock at system, I suppose, in a way, because I suppose this is what these wild waters represent. You really don't know what's going to happen. So we sat down, fed some bait, and as I anticipated, within 20 minutes we were into our first barbel. Happy days. You know, we ticked the box, and that was the main goal for today, was actually catching a barbel on the pole. That was the goal. But of course, when you get a barbel that early on in the session, you're now thinking, yeah, definitely going to get 3 or 4. But we only had 2 bites. And what's made it so difficult today is the downstream wind. It's been a really strong wind, and just trying to battle with the presentation against that wind has made it so hard work. I'm sure there was a few more fish there willing to feed if we could have presented our rig a little bit better. I've had to heavily overshot the rig. It's been really hard work, but let me tell you, it's been so enjoyable. And literally 3 hours later, I've had my second bite, hooked into a barbel, and unfortunately I've lost it in a snag. It's quite a notoriously snaggy peg, and of course that's why these barbel live here. But like I said earlier, the goal today was to catch a barbel on the pole, and we achieved it. And let me tell you, that X7 pole is ridiculous how strong it is. Not considering I've not used power kits, I've used a match kit with the Browning microbore elastic, 024 mainline, 022 hook length, a size 12 super spade, and really had to give that fish some power, some like force to get it upstream to net it. And that pole is just, I can't believe how strong it is. It's ridiculous. And it just goes to show how versatile it is on natural waters and commercials. But let me tell you, I've absolutely loved it today. It's been fantastic. Sat on somewhere so beautiful. And really, although we haven't had that many bites, it's that anticipation of waiting for the next bite and not actually knowing what you're going to catch. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I know it's not a long video, but it's something different. It's something unique. And let me tell you, there's not many places, especially in the UK, where you can go and catch wild double figure barbel on the pole on somewhere as beautiful as this. So until next time, sight lines.